The people want to topple the regime. As it does every Friday, the chant echoes down Syrian streets and alleys. In Homs, tens of thousands of people took to the streets. In this alley in the heart of Damascus, a much smaller group of men defied the security forces and managed to march, chant, and post this video on the internet. In the suburbs of Damascus, the security forces used live ammunition to disperse the protesters, and there were casualties. In Homs, the crack of bullets didn't deter the demonstrators. The government says one officer was killed. But in some towns and villages, the security forces stayed on the sidelines. Human rights activists say maybe Syria has begun to restrain its security forces because its closest ally, Turkey, has put a lot of pressure on the government to stop the violence and start reform. President Bashar al-Assad is expected to make some concessions when he addresses the nation next week. That could happen as early as Sunday. But the opposition is skeptical that this regime can actually bring real change. And the government's attempts to start a dialogue with some opposition figures have failed so far. The protesters insist meaningful dialogue is impossible as long as security forces continue to fire at protesters. Some opposition leaders are discussing ways to find a peaceful political solution to the crisis. But others, like these men, seem convinced that armed conflict is the only answer. A Turkish news agency that took these pictures say they show armed members of the Muslim Brotherhood group in northern Syria, near Jazeera. There, the government is using tanks and light weapons to fight what it says are armed groups. But residents fleeing the area insist it's the civilians who are being attacked and who are bearing the brunt of this conflict. And more people are fleeing their homes to seek safety as far away as the refugee camps in neighbouring Turkey. Meanwhile, activists posted these videos which they say show more soldiers and officers defecting from the army.
We took an oath to protect the Syrian Arab Republic, land and people. However, what's happening in reality is the complete opposite. Now we've taken our weapons and directed them at the hearts of the defenceless children of Syria. This is why I've defected.
But the scale of defection is still too small to threaten the government. And the problems in Syria are already spilling over into Lebanon. Clashes today in the northern town of Tripoli between those who support the Syrian government and those who march to support Syrian protesters, adding to Lebanese concerns on how the crisis in Syria will play out in Lebanon. Rula, Amin, Al Jazeera, Beirut.